Hello, my old friends. How are you today? I hope your morning began gently. With light falling across the kitchen table and the smell of something warm in the air, I'm Dr. Thompson, and after 50 years of watching blood pressure cuffs tighten and numbers rise on screens, I've learned that what keeps pressure steady isn't fear, it's rhythm. It's the quiet discipline of living kindly with your body. Welcome to Retired Doctor, where we talk about health and dignity, not as separate things but as the same heartbeat. Before we begin, remember, this channel is for education and reflection. Always talk with your own doctor before making changes. But if what I share brings clarity or comfort, I ask you to like, subscribe, and share. None of us walks this path alone. Now let me begin with a question. Have you ever noticed how a storm builds before the first drop of rain? That's what high blood pressure feels like inside the body. It creeps up quietly, a pressure mounting in silence until one day the storm breaks. I've seen patients shocked when I tell them their readings. How can that be? Doc, I feel fine. And that's the trap. Hypertension whispers. It doesn't shout. But the 1%, those rare, steady souls who live well into their 90s, without it, they listen for the whisper. I remember one patient, Mr. Ellis, a retired mail carrier. He came to me every spring for his checkup, cheerful as always, until one year his pressure spiked. He shrugged. Maybe it's just stress. But when we talked longer, I discovered the real culprit wasn't stress, it was habit. Every evening, he'd reward himself with canned soup and crackers. Comfort food, he said. He never knew that the sodium in those cans could fill a day's worth of salt in one meal. When I told him, he laughed softly. 50 years of walking mail routes, and it's soup that gets me. We worked together. He started reading labels, cooking at home, walking a few blocks each morning before breakfast. A year later, his numbers were back to normal. He said, "Doc, I feel lighter inside." That's the 1%. They don't fight their bodies, they listen, adjust, and move forward. What I want you to realize is that blood pressure isn't only about the heart, it's about everything that touches rhythm: what you eat, how you breathe, when you rest, how you respond to small irritations. The older we get, the more the body becomes like a musical instrument. Too much salt tightens the strings, too little water dries the sound, too much worry changes the tempo. The 1% learn to tune themselves gently each day. There's something deeply humbling about seeing a patient lower their pressure without medication through patience, awareness, and care. Take Mrs. Alvarez, for example. She started every morning by standing at her sink, filling a glass of water, and whispering a blessing before she drank. She told me, "It's my reminder to stay calm before the world starts talking." That single ritual helped her focus on hydration, breath, and gratitude, all small acts that, together, keyed in her system. The science is simple. Hydration helps the kidneys balance sodium, calm heart workload, and ease vessel tension. The poetry is simpler. Peace lowers pressure. I often tell my patients that numbers on a monitor are only half the story. The other half is how you live between measurements. If you spend your mornings rushing, your afternoons sitting, and your nights worrying, no pill can undo that. But if you slow down, stretch, and breathe deeply once every hour, the body remembers how to regulate itself. Hypertension isn't a curse of age, it's a reflection of imbalance. Restore balance, and you restore calm. One morning, I sat with a group of veterans at the community center. They were discussing blood pressure like it was a poker game. One said, "I hit 160 last week." Another replied, "Beat you. I was 180. They laughed, but beneath it was fear. So, I asked, "Who here walks after dinner?" Only one hand rose. I smiled and said, "That's your winner." You see, blood pressure drops naturally when you walk 15 minutes after eating. It helps the body digest, the vessels open, and stress hormones fall. No fancy gym required, just motion, consistency, and curiosity. The realization most people miss is that hypertension isn't about giving things up, it's about giving yourself back the chance to feel good. When you reduce salt, you rediscover taste. When you hydrate, you awaken energy. When you move, you remind your blood that it still has somewhere to go. That's how the 1% live. They replace fear with routine. Before you sleep tonight, I want you to notice one thing: your breathing. If it's shallow, take 3 slow breaths through your nose. Hold, then exhale through your mouth. That small act can lower your pressure within minutes. The nervous system quiets. The heart slows. The vessels open. Do this before bed, before meals, before measuring your pressure. Let calm become your first treatment. If you do that tomorrow morning, drink a full glass of water, take a short walk, and sprinkle a little less salt, you've already stepped into the 1%. Because the 1% aren't born different. They simply choose peace over pressure, one day at a time. There's something deeply human about the way we crave flavor. We aren't drawn to salt because we're careless. We're drawn to it because salt reminds us of life itself, of preservation, of shared tables, of comfort. I've seen so many older adults struggle to reduce sodium and feel guilty, as if it were a personal failure. But it isn't. It's a learned habit from years of canned soups, restaurant meals, and convenience. The body doesn't need punishment, it needs gentleness, retraining, and care. The 1% understand this. They don't fight their cravings, they redefine them. I think of Richard, a widower in his late 70s who used to tell me, "Doc, food doesn't taste the same since my wife passed." He began eating frozen dinners, something quick and easy, and within months, his blood pressure had climbed higher than ever. When I asked him to read the label, he squinted and said, "I can't even pronounce half of this stuff." We worked together to rebuild his meals, simple things he could enjoy again: fresh tomatoes, herbs, roasted vegetables, a touch of olive oil. 2 months later, his readings were down, and when I asked what made the biggest difference, he said, "Doc, I sit down again. I cook. I taste." That was it. He stopped feeding loneliness and started nourishing himself. Hypertension often begins in isolation. You eat alone, you rush through meals, you forget to drink water because no one's there to remind you. The rhythm of care fades. But every time you share a meal, every time you take time to notice your plate, you're not just feeding your body, you're lowering your pressure. The nervous system listens to companionship, laughter, conversation, the pause between bites. They all signal safety. Safety softens arteries. I've always believed that our blood vessels have memory. They remember storms, stress, fear, but they also remember calm. The way your pulse slows when you sit near someone you trust, or the way your chest feels lighter after a walk in the sun, that's medicine without a label. The 1% don't think of health as numbers. They think of it as a relationship between their habits and their heartbeat. I once had a patient named Gloria who kept a small notebook by her kitchen sink. Each page began with the same question: "Did I drink enough water today?" She told me she didn't always remember, so she made it a ritual. Every time she turned on the faucet, she'd fill her cup, drink slowly, and write a check mark. Her family teased her about it until one day her grandson said, "Grandma, you're the healthiest one here." She smiled and told me later, "Doc, I think it's because I finally made peace with my thirst." There's wisdom in that. Most of us ignore thirst until the body has to shout for attention. But hydration is the soft conversation between you and your cells. It's how your body thanks you for listening. I remember a summer afternoon when I measured my own pressure at home. I'd been writing all day, forgetting to stand or drink, and the numbers came back higher than usual. I laughed because I knew exactly what my patients felt: the frustration, the surprise. So, I stood up, filled a glass of water, and walked outside for 10 minutes. When I returned, the numbers had dropped. That's when I realized something I wish I'd told every patient earlier. You are not powerless. Your body responds kindly, quickly. When you do small things right, it forgives faster than you imagine. Empathy begins with recognizing that change doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't have to throw out your favorite foods or turn your life upside down. You begin with one swap, one walk, one extra glass. The body doesn't care about perfection, it cares about consistency. The 1% have mastered this art of steady kindness. There's a quiet dignity in the older patients who choose to keep learning, like the gentleman who bought a digital blood pressure monitor just so he could track patterns. He came back weeks later, proud, saying, "Doc, I can tell when I'm calm before I even measure." That's awareness. That's health. The goal isn't to chase low numbers. It's to understand your body's language. Sometimes, I imagine all my patients sitting together in a room, comparing stories of how they brought their pressure down. One would say, "I stopped adding salt before tasting." Another would say, "I started stretching during TV commercials." Someone else would laugh and add, "I just started drinking water when I felt tired." None of them did anything heroic. But together, they became the 1%, the quiet masters of gentle discipline. Tonight, as you prepare for bed, think about how you speak to your body. Do you scold it for the numbers? Or do you thank it for still carrying you through? The heart listens to tone. The way you talk to yourself shapes the way your body behaves. If you choose patience, it will meet you halfway. If you choose gratitude, it will stabilize faster. When people ask me why some seniors live so long without high blood pressure, I tell them it's because they make peace with time. They don't rush their mornings. They sit when they eat. They walk without a goal other than the walk itself. They understand that the body doesn't age evenly, and that's okay. Health is not perfection. It's partnership. So tonight, before you close your eyes, whisper one promise to yourself. I will listen to my body before it needs to shout. That's the beginning of calm. And calm is the foundation of balance. Hope is not the loud celebration of victory. It is the quiet return of trust. Trust that your body still knows how to heal, and that your days can still hold peace. I've spent decades watching people fight against their blood pressure, as if the numbers on a machine were an enemy. But the 1%, those rare souls who never let hypertension own them, they treat those numbers like a compass. Not judgment, but guidance. Each reading is a conversation between them and their body, and they respond not with panic, but with presence. I remember Helen, an 82-year-old who used to come to my office every Thursday morning. She carried a little notebook filled with dates, meals, moods, and readings. One day she smiled and said, "Doc, I've learned that my pressure listens to my attitude." I asked her what she meant. She said, "When I rush, it rises. When I sing while cooking, it stays calm." She had discovered something most people miss, that emotion and blood pressure move together like wind and water. Control one, and you guide the other. That kind of self-awareness doesn't come from books. It comes from daily intimacy with your own life, from being curious about how food, movement, and thoughts shape the rhythm of your body. The 1% live as students of themselves. They observe, adjust, and forgive. If their pressure rises one day, they don't scold themselves. They take a walk, drink water, breathe, and trust the next reading will be better. They understand that health isn't a fixed line. It's a dance between tension and release. Each morning offers a chance to practice this rhythm. You can begin simply. Wake up slowly. Drink a full glass of water. Stretch your arms toward the ceiling. And whisper, "Thanks for another sunrise." Breakfast doesn't need to be complicated. A bowl of oats, a few berries, a drizzle of olive oil instead of salt. When you walk, listen to your steps. The sound of them like small heartbeats on the earth. Notice how your body softens into motion. These small rituals are how the 1% anchor themselves against the current of age. Sometimes I think of blood pressure as a conversation between you and time itself. You can't silence time, but you can choose how to speak to it. Instead of rushing through the years, let each one teach you something about patience. Measure your pressure not to control it, but to understand it. It will tell you stories about nights you slept well, about meals that calmed you, about stress that crept in unnoticed. Listening is the medicine most of us forget to take. I still remember my last hospital rotation before retirement. A younger doctor asked me, "What's the secret to keeping patients' blood pressure low?" I told him the truth he didn't expect. Teach them to slow down before they sit down. He laughed. But it's true. Every rise in blood pressure has a story of hurry behind it. Hurry in thoughts, in meals, in expectations. The cure, then, is slowness. Slow eating, slow breathing, slow forgiving. The body was never built for speed in its later years. It was built for rhythm, repetition, and grace. So here's my invitation to you. For 1 week, practice living like the 1%. Cook fresh. Drink water before coffee. Walk after lunch. Sit by the window each evening, breathing slowly, until the sun slips away. Write down how you feel. At the end of that week, look at your blood pressure again. It may surprise you, not just the numbers, but how your body feels in them. Lightness, calm, confidence. These are the rewards of awareness. There's no miracle. In the 1%, they are ordinary people who kept their promises to themselves. They listened, they adjusted, and they trusted that gentleness would take them farther than force ever could. I've seen it in their eyes, a kind of calm that medicine alone can't create. They have made peace with time, and when you make peace with time, your heart follows. What we've learned together is simple. Blood pressure is not an enemy, but a messenger. The 1% who live long and calm don't rely on luck. They practice small, faithful habits. They eat with awareness. Avoid hidden salt. Drink water before thirst. And move their bodies with respect. They understand that the heart listens to kindness, and that every breath can be a small act of healing. So tomorrow morning, before the world hurries you, pause, fill a glass of water, step into the light, and breathe. That single moment of calm is the beginning of control. That is how the 1% live, not chasing perfection, but returning to balance, one gentle choice at a time. I'm Dr. Thompson. Thank you for spending these moments with me. Until our next story, stay kind to your body and patient with your days, because peace, my friends, is the quiet medicine that keeps us alive.